We hope everyone's having a fantastic day. We're in the middle of kind of a multi-part series when we're talking about patient communications and HIPAA concerns as they surround those patient communications. And last week we talked about emails. This week we're going to talk about texting. And here's the problem. There is a dearth of information out there for texting. If you go out to HHS's website and look at their HIPAA FAQs, in fact, you'll find that there's not even the word texting mentioned once. And so that kind of leaves us in a hole of not necessarily understanding exactly what are these requirements. And the good news is earlier this year, the director of HHS's Office for Civil Rights, OCR, who is the governing body in regards to HIPAA enforcement, was speaking at a health IT conference and gave us some good clarity in this. He said, by the way, it's Roger Severino. Roger said, "I don't see a difference. I think it's empowering the patient, making sure that their data is as accessible as possible in a way that they want to receive it, and that's what we want to do." And that was in regards to a question comparing email to texting. And so email, we have a bit more clarity. Talked about that last week. You want to watch that video if you haven't, because you want to make sure that the patient understands the difference in encrypted and unencrypted. If they don't, you need to explain it to them. If they tell you they don't want to receive communications via email, or in this case, texting, you don't want to do that either. That all applies. And if somebody's really not tech savvy and they can't grasp the difference in unencrypted and encrypted, either explain it to them or simply don't use that form of communication. That's your easiest forms of protection. But we talked about that last week. As we focus in on texting, those same rules apply when we start talking about HIPAA and privacy. But there's a few other concerns and things that you really want to take into consideration as you begin to text patients. One is you're moving from more of a business structured email environment into a more personal texting environment. And so there is a difference in those ways that patients take those types of communications. And so be careful with that. We've seen some doctors run into some challenges with patients crossing some of those lines. And we don't want our doctors to fall into that same trap. Additionally, what we've got is a few years ago, the American College of Physicians and the Federation of State Medical Boards actually released some guidelines in regards to social media use and gave some clarification for text messaging. The biggest thing is this: you want to make sure that that you limit your text messages to interactions really with your established patients. You don't want to begin to have those communications with patients that haven't established, because you want to make sure that you've done a full examination and you can truly help that patient. So be careful in that regards. Additionally, they're not necessarily the same as email because it's a shorter format. And because you're limited to so many characters or so much on a screen, although we're not limited as much as we used to be, we're not limited just to that 144 characters anymore, but it still is a problem because you don't have the girth of an email to be able to lay out complex situations, and more of our words in texting are misunderstood than even in email, and that's saying something. So you want to be cautious in those regards, and so that's where we are with texting. I think we have a bit more clarity. Watch last week's video on email. That'll give you clarity for texting and also a bit more cautious. In the future, we're going to talk about some medical records and other social media type communications, and hopefully this will help you out in your office. We'll catch you next week.